Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I always imagined growing old with her, my high school sweetheart who turned into my wife, the mother of my child. We had built a life together, one filled with milestones. First home, first car, first kiss, first baby. These were the things that held us together, or at least that's what I thought. We met in college, Sarah and I. She was that girl who lit up every room she walked into, the one who had a laugh that could lift your spirits even on the worst days. I was drawn to her immediately. She had an energy, a spark that made everything feel possible. She was funny, kind, and seemed to know exactly what she wanted out of life. And for me, that was enough. I was content just being beside her. It felt like we were a perfect match. I thought I knew her better than anyone in this world. We got married after graduation. I was proud of her, and I thought I was everything she needed. We built a home together and a family. We had a beautiful daughter, Emily, who became the center of our world. And for years, I thought we were happy. But over time, I started noticing small things. Her phone would ring, and she'd quickly turn it face down. She'd go out for late dinners with friends and wouldn't come back until late at night. Little things began to add up, but I chose to ignore them. I was too busy, too focused on keeping everything together. It wasn't until I found the old picture of Sarah and her college ex that things started to unravel. I had been going through some old boxes in our attic, cleaning up for spring. I was looking for a box of old photos to show Emily when she asked about our past. I came across an envelope, sealed and tucked into the bottom of a dusty crate. Inside were pictures from Sarah's college days. Her and a group of friends, laughing and carefree. There were a few pictures of Sarah with her college ex, Jake. I had seen him before in passing. He was a charming guy, no doubt, but I hadn't paid much attention to him. I didn't think it mattered. But then, as I kept flipping through the photos, I came across a picture that made my stomach drop. It was a photo of Sarah and Jake sitting together on a park bench, her head resting on his shoulder. They were close. Too close. I hadn't seen that picture before. I froze. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just an innocent picture. But my mind kept going back to the other things I had noticed. The late-night phone calls, the distance between us, the lack of attention to our relationship. Was this all in my head, or was it something more? I didn't say anything that day. I kept it to myself, letting the unease settle deep in my gut. Over the next few days, I watched her more closely, trying to find the courage to ask her about it. But I couldn't bring myself to confront her yet. I wasn't ready for the possibility that everything I thought was real could be a lie. One evening, a few days later, I came home from work to find her sitting on the couch with Emily. They were watching a movie, but Sarah's eyes were glued to her phone. I could see her smiling, laughing at something. I didn't think much of it at first, but when she quickly hid the screen when I walked into the room, it felt like something shifted. My suspicions grew stronger. I didn't say anything that night. I let it go, but deep inside, I knew. I knew something had changed. A week passed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her. She had become more distant, more closed off. She spent more time away from home, and when she was here, she seemed distracted. Emily started calling her college ex, Jake, fairy tale dad whenever they spoke about him. At first, I thought it was cute, a joke she must have picked up from a storybook. But when she said it again, this time in front of me, I couldn't ignore the way it felt like a dagger to my heart. It wasn't just a playful nickname. Emily had never called anyone else Dad. Jake wasn't just a distant memory. He was someone Sarah had clearly been keeping close, someone she'd let into our lives without me even knowing. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Emily had become attached to him. It wasn't just a nickname. It was a sign of something much deeper. The betrayal hit me hard. It wasn't just about infidelity. It was about everything she had hidden from me, everything I thought we had built together. Sarah had let another man into our lives in a way that felt intimate, secretive, and dishonest. My daughter had started to accept Jake as a father figure, and I was left in the dark, blindsided by the distance between us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, the weight of everything settling over me. I thought about the woman I married, the girl I had fallen in love with. I thought about the promises we made to each other. and I realized that I had no idea who she was anymore. The next morning, I decided to confront her. I couldn't live in this uncertainty anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I didn't know how the conversation would go, but I had to know the truth. I had to know if I was just imagining everything or if my worst fears were real. When Sarah came downstairs that morning, she looked surprised to see me already up. She hadn't expected me to be awake. She smiled, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know how much I knew. "I found something," I said quietly, my voice trembling with the weight of what I had to say. "The pictures, and I know about Jake." Her smile faded, and for the first time she didn't know how to respond. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The truth hung between us, thick and undeniable. "Who are you, Sarah?" I asked, my voice raw with emotion. "Who have you become?" The silence between us was deafening. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. I could see it in her eyes. She had made her choice. The silence in the room stretched long, thick with the unspoken truth. Sarah didn't move. She didn't try to defend herself, to explain herself, to deny it. She just stood there, frozen. The woman I had spent years with, the woman who was supposed to be my partner, was now a stranger. And in that moment, I realized how much I had been blind to. I had spent so long defending the idea of her, protecting our marriage, building a life that I thought was secure. But now, all of that was crumbling right before my eyes. "You're still in love with him, aren't you?" I asked, the words coming out before I even realized what I was saying. "Jake. You've been hiding it from me for years, haven't you?" She flinched as though the words had struck her. I saw her face lose its color, her eyes shifting to avoid mine. She opened her mouth trying to find something to say, but all that came out was a choked sob. She dropped her head into her hands, breaking down. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered between the sobs. "I never thought it would be like this. I was just so lost, and he was there for me. I don't know how it happened. It was a mistake, a huge mistake." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and I could see the weight of her guilt settling over her. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't going to let her use guilt as a way to walk away from this. "Do you think that makes it better?" I asked, my voice cold, a sharp edge to it. "Do you think I can just forget that you've been lying to me, that you've been with him, that you've allowed him to be part of our lives, while I was sitting here believing everything was fine? And now you're telling me it was a mistake?" "No, Sarah, you don't get to apologize your way out of this. You've been hiding him, letting him take my place with our daughter, while I was here trying to be a good husband and father. And now you want me to just forgive you? Just like that?" She shook her head, her hands trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you." "But you did," I said, cutting her off. "You already did, and that's the truth we both have to face. You didn't just cheat on me, Sarah. You let me be a fool. You let me be a husband who thought everything was fine when you were already halfway out the door. And now you're telling me you made a mistake. You think that's enough?" She collapsed into the chair, her face in her hands as the tears flowed freely now. "I'm so sorry," she kept repeating, but it wasn't enough. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but it didn't move me. It couldn't. Nothing could undo the betrayal. And then it hit me. How deep her deception had run. How much she had fooled not just me, but everyone. Emily, our daughter, had grown attached to Jake, calling him fairy tale dad. She had let our daughter believe Jake was the man of the house. And now I was left with nothing. The image of her calling Jake that name, the innocent trust in her eyes made my stomach turn. How could Sarah do this to me? How could she let it go so far? "I saw her, Sarah," I said, my voice shaking with the anger I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. "I saw Emily call him her fairy tale dad. Do you know how that feels, to hear my daughter, your daughter, say that? Do you have any idea what you've done to her?" Sarah was silent, and I saw the guilt wash over her like a tidal wave. She knew. She knew how deep the damage was. "Please," she whispered, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. "I never meant for this to happen. I didn't think she would get so attached. I didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't just hurt me," I said, my voice low. "You've hurt Emily too. You've broken the trust we had. and now I have to fix it. The truth hit me harder than I ever imagined. She had betrayed me, yes, but worse. She had betrayed Emily's trust too. As a father, my role was to protect her, to guide her, to shield her from the hurt of the world. But Sarah had taken that away from me. She had allowed another man into our home, into our lives, and worse yet, into the heart of our daughter. How could I ever explain to Emily why things changed? How could I tell her that the man she called fairy tale dad wasn't just a figure in a book, but a real man who had been there when I wasn't? The weight of it was almost too much to bear, but I couldn't break down. I couldn't afford to let myself collapse. I had to hold it together for Emily. I had to be strong enough to protect her from this. I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I don't know if I even want to. I thought we built something real, but now I see it was just a house of cards. I don't even know who you are anymore. She looked at me with eyes full of pain, but there was no going back. She had made her choice. She had chosen him, chosen a life behind my back. She had chosen to destroy everything we had, everything we had built. And now I was left to pick up the pieces. I'll leave, she whispered. I'll leave and I'll raise Emily on my own if I have to. I'll make it right. Please, don't let this be the end. But I couldn't let her off that easy. She had already made her decision, and now she would have to live with the consequences. You can leave all you want, Sarah, I said, my voice hard, but it's not going to fix anything. You've already broken everything. You've lost my trust, and that's something you can't get back. She didn't respond. She just sat there broken, her tears flowing freely. And in that moment I realized that I wasn't just grieving the loss of my wife. I was grieving the loss of the family I had worked so hard to build. I was grieving the loss of my daughter's innocence, the trust that she would never get back. I couldn't stay here anymore. Not with her, not with the lies, not with the betrayal. I stood up, my chest heavy with the weight of what had to be done. I'm leaving, I said quietly. I'll be back to get my things later. I can't do this anymore. You've made your choice. Now I have to make mine. And with that, I walked out the door. The days after I left felt like walking through a fog. The apartment I moved into was smaller than the home we shared, but it was mine. No more pretending, no more living under the weight of Sarah's lies. The silence in the apartment was both liberating and suffocating. I'd never lived alone before. There were moments when I would find myself staring out the window, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. But then I'd remember and the anger would surge again. I had tried so hard to be a good husband, a good father. I had given everything I had to make sure Sarah felt loved and cherished. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. She had taken our daughter, our home, and everything we had built together, and she'd thrown it all away for something fleeting, for something that wasn't even real. I needed space to breathe, to process the reality of it all. I didn't know what came next, but I had to put one foot in front of the other. I spent the first few weeks just focusing on the basics. I worked, I ate, I slept. The emotional weight of it all left me numb. There was no room for anger or sorrow, not yet. I had to be strong for Emily. That was the only thing I could control now. And then, one evening, I got a call. It was Emily. I hadn't spoken to her since I left. Sarah had made sure of that. She had told me that it wasn't the right time, that Emily needed to adjust to the change before we could speak. I respected that, even though it felt like a betrayal. But this time, when I saw Emily's name on the screen, I couldn't ignore it. Dad? Her voice came through the phone, small and unsure. My heart ached at the sound of it. I had missed her so much. I thought about the days when we would spend hours together, just the two of us, laughing, talking about everything and nothing. She had always been my little girl, and now she sounded so distant. Hey, Em, I said, my voice soft. How are you, kiddo? There was a long pause on the other end. I could tell she was trying to hold back her tears. I miss you, Dad, she whispered. I don't know what's happening. Why did you leave? I sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of her question settle deep inside me. How could I explain this to her? How could I explain everything that had happened without hurting her more than I already had? Sweetheart, I began, taking a deep breath. I didn't want to leave. But sometimes people make choices that hurt others, and when that happens, We have to make hard decisions. I left because I couldn't live in a lie anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was okay when it wasn't, and I needed you to know the truth. But Mom says we're all going to be okay, Emily said, her voice breaking. She says we'll be a family again, that everything's going to be fine. I closed my eyes, my chest tightening. How could Sarah say that? How could she feed our daughter these lies when everything had already changed? Emily, I said, my voice firm but gentle. Sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to, and that's okay. You and I will be okay, but I need you to understand that I'm not coming back. Not to her, not to that, and you have to know it's not your fault. I could hear Emily's sobs through the phone. I don't want things to change, she said, the words trembling. I want you and Mom to be together. I wanted to tell her that I would make it right, that everything could go back to normal. But I couldn't lie to her like that. I couldn't promise her something I couldn't give. I know, sweetheart, I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. I know you want that. But sometimes when people hurt each other, it's better for everyone if they don't stay together. I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will always be your dad. I will always love you. She sniffled. I love you too, Dad. I just don't know what to do. I knew how she felt. I didn't know what to do either, but we had each other, and that had to be enough. For now. The conversation ended with more tears, but I promised to call her again soon. I didn't want her to feel abandoned. I knew this was just the beginning, that the road ahead would be rocky, but I was determined to be there for her. No matter what Sarah did, no matter how much she tried to manipulate Emily, I wouldn't let her turn my daughter against me. The next few days passed in a blur. I kept busy with work, trying to keep my mind occupied. But my thoughts always returned to Emily. I thought about the life she was now living, the uncertainty in her heart. I thought about Sarah, too, and every time I did, a surge of anger and sadness would hit me all over again. But there was something else growing in me, something unexpected. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was resolve. I had been the one who had been betrayed, yes, but I wasn't going to let it define me. I wasn't going to let Sarah's choices dictate the rest of my life. I had to do something that would allow me to regain control of my future, my life. And that's when the idea came to me. I would take back everything that Sarah had stolen. I would show her that I could move on, that I could build a life without her. And more than that, I would show her the truth of what she had done. She had thought she could play with my life, that she could cheat without consequences. But I was going to make sure she understood the weight of her actions. I didn't know how exactly, but I knew I had to start living for myself again. I had to let go of the past and begin something new, something I could call my own. No more looking back. No more playing the victim. I was done with being the man who allowed himself to be deceived. The following weeks were a mix of personal growth and moments of intense emotional struggle. I focused on Emily and making sure she knew I was there for her. I filed for full custody, wanting to protect her from the lies and manipulation that I knew Sarah was still feeding her. But I also began to rebuild. Slowly, I started to piece together the life that had been taken from me. I surrounded myself with people who cared about me, people who reminded me of who I was before all of this. I started going to the gym again, picked up old hobbies I had forgotten about, and took time for myself. And as I did, I realized something. I didn't need Sarah. I never did. And then came the phone call. It was Sarah calling out of nowhere, almost a month after I had left. She wanted to talk, she said. And for a brief moment, I almost considered it. But then I remembered what she had done, what she had taken. I remembered her lies, her betrayal, and the way she had manipulated our daughter. I don't think there's anything to talk about, Sarah, I said when I picked up the phone. You made your choices, and I've made mine. Her voice faltered. Please don't do this, we can fix things. But I wasn't interested in fixing what was already broken. I wasn't going to let her pull me back into the mess she had created. I'm not coming back, Sarah, I said, my voice steady. And I won't let you keep manipulating Emily. She deserves to know the truth, and so do I. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling slightly, but I didn't look back. The chapter with Sarah was closed, and though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: I was moving forward, and as for Sarah, she would have to live with the choices she had made. And what happened after that? That would be the truth she would have to face.